You're listening to The Unnamed Investigator. I'm your guide through the cases that never left me, the ones that followed me from town to town. This one was no different. There are cases that close quickly. The evidence lines up, a name emerges, and justice moves at something close to the speed it should. And then there are the other kind. The ones where a man dies violently in his own home, where investigators do everything right, collect everything they can, and still walk away empty-handed. Where decades pass, where the people who loved him grow older, carrying a weight that was never supposed to be theirs to carry. This is one of those cases. And what makes it remarkable is not just that it was finally solved. It's how it was solved and what that says about the detectives who were there on September 7th, 1977, in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Ralph Ambrose Gianoli was 48 years old. He worked at an American Motors factory, the kind of steady, unglamorous work that built this country one shift at a time. He lived at 5310 25th Avenue in Kenosha. That was his home. And it was inside that home, on that September day, that a friend found him dead after police were called to the residence. What investigators encountered when they arrived was not a quiet scene. There were signs of a violent struggle throughout the house. Blood in the bedroom, blood in the living room, broken beer bottles, blood on the outside of the front door. A man had fought for his life in that space, and he had lost. The autopsy confirmed what the scene suggested. Ralph Gianoli died from asphyxiation by strangulation. He had been strangled with an electrical cord. Blunt force trauma to the head and abdomen had also contributed to his death. This was not an accident. This was not ambiguous. Someone had come into that home and made a deliberate, brutal decision to end his life. The detectives who worked that scene in 1977 did something that would matter enormously, though none of them could have known just how much at the time. They collected everything: hairs, fingernail scrapings, a wristwatch, the ligature cord, items containing blood, glass, and latent prints. It was thorough, methodical work, the kind of evidence collection that reflects investigators who understood that what they preserved that day might be all they had. And despite all of it, despite the exhaustive investigation that followed, they could not establish probable cause to arrest anyone. The case went cold. Not because they failed, but because the science that would eventually crack it open did not yet exist. For 48 years, the case sat. Nearly 5 decades. Ralph Gianoli's family held on. They were given realistic assessments along the way, the kind that acknowledged the painful possibility that some cases never close. And still, the case was not forgotten. Cold cases rarely are, not for the families, and not for the detectives who inherit them. The turning point began in 2022. The Kenosha Police Department's Cold Case Unit reopened the investigation and partnered with the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation and the FBI to pursue advanced DNA testing. The focus shifted to something that had been sitting in evidence storage since 1977, the fingernail clippings taken from Ralph Gianoli during the original investigation. Those clippings had been carefully preserved for nearly half a century. In 2023, the Wisconsin State Crime Lab developed a partial DNA profile from the material recovered from those clippings. That profile was uploaded into a family tree DNA database, and that database pointed investigators toward a name: James Terry Fowler. From there, the case was advanced through forensic genetic genealogy work conducted by Othram, a private DNA laboratory that used what they call forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive profile. The science is precise, deliberate, and extraordinarily powerful when applied to preserved biological material. What it did here was bridge 48 years in a way that no other tool could have. James Fowler was 68 years old when investigators found him. In 1977, he was 19. He was on leave from the Great Lakes Naval Training Center in Illinois when Ralph Gianoli was killed. Investigators believe Fowler and Gianoli met earlier on the night of the homicide, though the specific details of that encounter have not been publicly disclosed. What the DNA told investigators was that Fowler was there, that his genetic material was under Gianoli's fingernails, preserved across nearly 5 decades of careful evidence storage. Fowler's history did not begin and end with 1977. In 1983, he was convicted of killing his own father in Alabama. He served 5 years in prison for that crime, a pattern of violence that stretches across decades, across state lines, across the lives of more than one family. In 2025, police located and interviewed Fowler in Memphis, Tennessee. They obtained limited information from him. A $1.5 million arrest warrant was issued in January 2026. On March 30, 2026, James Terry Fowler was arrested in Memphis on a charge of first-degree murder. The same year, the DNA recovered from beneath Ralph Gianoli's fingernails was confirmed to match Fowler's profile. He is currently in the process of being extradited from Tennessee to Wisconsin to face trial. Investigators continue working to establish a clear motive for the crime. That part of the story is not yet fully written. This case is the 7th publicly announced case in Wisconsin, where law enforcement leveraged advanced DNA identification techniques to solve a homicide. 7 cases, 7 moments where the science caught up to the crime. But what strikes me most about this one is not the technology, as remarkable as it is. It's the 1977 detectives, the ones who responded to a house on 25th Avenue, who saw the blood and the broken bottles and the electrical cord, and who made a decision to collect everything they could, to preserve it, to treat it as if it mattered, even if they never knew why. They couldn't have imagined forensic genetic genealogy. They couldn't have imagined what a private DNA laboratory in 2023 would be capable of doing with a fingernail clipping. But they preserved that evidence anyway, because that is what careful, serious investigators do. Ralph Gianoli's family spent 48 years waiting. That is not a small thing. That is a lifetime of unanswered questions, of anniversaries that carry grief alongside them, of a name that deserved resolution. What this case tells me after all the years I've spent walking through cases like this one is that evidence does not expire. That patience, even when it stretches across generations, can still yield something real. That the decisions made in the first hours of an investigation can echo forward across decades in ways no one can fully anticipate. Justice took 48 years to arrive at Ralph Gianoli's door. But it arrived. And it arrived because in 1977, someone thought to save the fingernail clippings. That is what I keep coming back to. That is what this case means.